A few weeks ago, Games Workshop released what they are calling the Liber Addenda, which is the first in perhaps a series of short rules adjustments that modify weapons in this case, but potentially other things related to Legions Imperialis. And in this video today, I thought we would go through the changes that were made in this first Liber Addenda and talk about them, and then maybe talk about the implications for the game as a whole going forward. So the first change, and I guess I should preface all this by saying that this had everything to do with Titans and specifically their weapons. So all of the changes that we're going to see today in this Liber Addenda are either additions of new weapons to existing Titans or changes to existing weapons profiles. So we're not going to talk about the new weapons today. We're just going to talk about the changes specifically. And the first such change is to the Plasma Blast Gun, which was one of the most maligned and weakest weapons that we encountered when Legions Imperialis was first released. And that was primarily because there was almost no reason to take this weapon. There was, in fact, no reason to take this weapon over the Turbo Laser Destructor on the Warhound specifically. And in the Liber Strategia, they changed it a little bit. And in this Liber Addenda, they've made an additional change exclusively to the range of the weapon. So it's now a 25-inch weapon, firing 3 dice, hitting on 3s with an AP of -3. So if you compare that to the Turbo Laser Destructor specifically, this is, I think personally, and again, I've said this before, I'm not a huge Titan player, so I don't have a lot of experience using these weapons in Legions Imperialis, but just looking at it from a mathematical, numerical perspective, a 25-inch range with 3 dice on a 3+ to hit versus a 40-inch range with 2 dice on a 4+ to hit, even if that's accurate. This seems like a weapon that is more competitive. I think the 40-inch range is still pretty difficult to walk away from, but the fact that you're hitting on 3s with this and you're getting potentially 3 dice makes it, I think, more competitive. The next weapon that's been adjusted is the Natrix Shock Lance. And the only change to this weapon is that it now has an 8-inch range rather than a 6-inch range. I don't know how I feel about this weapon. I think it's probably one of the weaker ones in the Titan inventory. I mean, it does have the capability to, move through or to pierce void shields and to deliver a shock pulse to another Titan or, any other kind of super heavy vehicle, I suppose. The thing that really is, takes this weapon, makes this weapon pretty weak in my eyes is just the short range. And I don't think the 2-inch improvement that they've made is really going to change that. And again, this goes back to the fact that, you're paying a lot of points for a Titan, and this weapon you're probably not going to be able to use on the first or maybe even the second turn. And the third turn, you might get a shot off, but you've spent however many points, and for 2 of those turns, you're really not getting to use this weapon. Even if it is a major payoff, if it does hit, if it does connect, you do get that shock pulse off. You do cripple a Titan for a turn. That could potentially be a big payoff for you if you take this weapon. But is it going to be enough to justify the loss of potentially taking another weapon in exchange for it that might be able to get 2 rounds of shooting where this weapon gets only 1 3 turns later, when it may be too late to make much of a difference in the course of the game? So I think, it's a good change. Does it make much of a difference? In my eyes, not really. For the next weapon, the Ursus Claw, I'm going to be honest, is much the same. I mean, it is a bigger change. They've increased the range by 4 inches to a total of 10. And again, I think this weapon is so specialized, and it's still so short range that I really don't know how much use you're going to get out of this. And I do like that they've made the change. But again, for the reasons that I just discussed with the Natrix Shock Lance, I don't see this getting much play. Moving on to the Reaver, the Mega Bolter The only change has been to bring its dice that it fires up to 10, which brings it into line with other mega bolters. I think this is more of an administrative change rather than a balance change, so not much to say here. As far as some further weapons, we have the Sun Fury Plasma Annihilator, which has had its range increased by 5 to 30 inches, and it now fires 4 dice, hits on 3s with AP -3. So they've increased the number of dice, and they've increased the range. And so, I mean, again, this is a Warlord weapon. I don't play with Warlords that much. I've not faced them very often. Again, I do think that having Titan weapons be stronger, be longer ranged, is probably necessary for them to be functional and capable in Allegiance Imperialis game, as we've been discussing over the past few minutes with the other weapons, the Natrix Shock Lance and the Urza's Claw. So I think, you know, increasing the range of this weapon, which is supposed to be a powerful plasma weapon, making it more dangerous, seems to be a perfectly reasonable change. The next weapon is the Volkite Destructor, and the only change here is that it now fires 5 dice instead of 4. And so Volkite is in a funny place. It's got a 16-inch range. I think, again, the range is just so short that it seems not worth taking on your very expensive Warlord Titan. Yes, it can, it's more efficient at chewing through void shields, which could be good, but that doesn't seem like the kind of role that you want to be giving your big Warlord Titan. You probably want that to be something smaller, something less points costly, you know, as an auxiliary weapon to allow the heavier, stronger weapons that you can mount, like the Sun Fury Plasma Annihilator, that you can mount on your Warlord to deliver the knockout punch, right? You have your Warhounds harassing the flanks, harrying the enemy, delivering, using those specialized weapons to perhaps even the Urza's Claw or the Natrix Shock Lance to debilitate, to cripple the enemy, to take down their void shields, and allow that Warlord to vector in on a weakened target and kill it. But that 16-inch range, it is AP -2, but it is also light AT, right? So it doesn't seem like the kind of weapon that you really want to be mounting on your Warlord. If you have experience with the Volkite Destructor in your games and you think this is a great weapon, do let me know. I'd be curious to hear. So that's it. That's it for the changes. It's pretty light in terms of maybe what we might have liked to see changed about some weapons, different things about Legions Imperialis. But I do think it is encouraging that Games Workshop has taken the time to release something like this. I don't know if it's just to reassure us that they are paying attention to the game. I think it clearly shows that they are paying attention in the sense that they are looking at how the game is being played, how the weapons are being used, and what effects the rules are having on the tactics and how the game plays out on a local level, right? With specific weapons, making fairly minor changes to a fairly broad selection of weaponry for Titans. So I think it is reassuring. I'm not ready to say that Games Workshop is going to be, you know, releasing more of these changes for other weapons or for other types of units. It's possible, certainly. I would like to see that happen. I think it's a good idea, and I've always championed the idea of Games Workshop moving to a more digital rules structure. You know, I think this is the 21st century, and especially if we're making lots of these little changes, having a digital library of weapons like Legion Builder, essentially, but an official source, could, you know, and the rules even, that would allow them to make changes more efficiently. And maybe this is a subject for another video. But anyway, suffice it to say, I think this is a reassuring sign from Games Workshop They're paying attention to how the game is played, how weapons at an individual level are behaving and functioning, and they're taking steps to improve the weapons that are maybe not so strong, and to allow players to have more of a choice when it comes to selecting their titans, their weapons, and building their armies, rather than having a clear and constant choice of a single best weapon in all circumstances, right? Which is all to the good. I'm all about games requiring you to make real tactical choices. And a huge part of that, especially in a Games Workshop game, is in how you build your army. So the more that they can do to encourage diversity and tactical thought in army building and play, the better it is for Legions Imperialis. So that's it for now, guys. I will be back with more videos soon, and I'll see you then.